Hello and welcome to the online premiere of HIV+Me. My name is Nathaniel Hall. I'm co-artistic director of Dibby Theatre and artistic lead and director of the films. If you require captions, you can switch them on by clicking or tapping the CC logo in the control panel at the bottom of this video. You can also say hi in the chat panel to the right. We'd love to know who's in the audience tonight, so give us a wave. Tonight you're going to see three remarkable stories about life with HIV, written and performed by three people who live with the virus and also fight the stigma associated with it here in Greater Manchester. They're not professional artists or storytellers, but they've all shown incredible creativity, strength, pride and humility as they've gone on this journey with us, and I can't thank them enough for trusting me and the creative team with their stories. The films are the culmination of a project called In Equal Parts, a community-led creative outreach project tackling HIV stigma and shame. Now, we launched In Equal Parts last November after another global pandemic interrupted the touring plans of my show First Time about my own story of life with HIV. HIV has changed. It's not only now a manageable long-term health condition, but also those on effective treatment cannot pass on the virus, and there's now preventative treatments available on the NHS too. And here in the UK, the government has committed to ending all new transmissions of HIV by 2030. But HIV stigma and shame still prevail, creating a culture of fear and othering around HIV that creates a barrier to regular testing, as well as miss and late diagnosis. Stigma and shame can also have a devastating impact on the mental well-being of people living with the virus. And whilst narratives of HIV exist in mainstream theatre, television and film, these narratives tend to be historical, and many of these depictions also centre white gay men. In the UK, men who have sex with men make up around 50% of people living with HIV. The other 50% are heterosexual from a range of communities and backgrounds. Of this 50%, women make up a third, and globally, HIV affects women and girls in far greater numbers. HIV+Me offers three very different perspectives of HIV and reminds us of the diversity of experience of people living with the virus, whilst also acknowledging the unique challenges and stigmas people from different communities face. Now, some of you have been invited tonight as representatives of cultural organisations and institutions. It is our ambition to screen these three beautifully shot films across Greater Manchester in the lead up to 1st of December, which is World AIDS Day 2021, along with the message that Greater Manchester and the UK are now committed to ending all new transmissions of HIV by 2030. The films could be shown at live screenings, digital screenings, in exhibition spaces, or even just shared with your mailing list via a YouTube premiere like this one. If after viewing the films you're interested in sharing our work, please drop us a line at hello@dibbytheatre.org. There's a small fee attached to the films to help us balance our books, but don't let this be a barrier. If you're a small organisation, let's have a chat. Now tonight you're going to see Paul, Mark and Yvonne's stories. Each one lasts approximately 5 minutes and they'll play one after another during this live broadcast. You can pause the broadcast and rewind if you need to, but you can't fast forward unless you've been on pause for a while. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments, so please do pop them in the chat box between the films. And finally, before the films begin, I should warn you that they do contain frank discussion of illness, death and dying, intravenous drug use and addiction, and also homophobia and racism.
Just say what you have to breakfast.
Cereal and toast and cup of tea for breakfast.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just having a conversation.
Just having a conversation, exactly like we're doing now. Action.
I remember it was in 1983 when I first read about this strange new disease called GRID, gay-related immune deficiency, beginning to affect gay men in America. And it began a slow burn of fear. Was it caused by sniffing poppers? Would it ever come to Manchester? I was working in a grotty basement at the Gay Centre, 61A Bloom Street, frantically writing articles for a local community newspaper, trying to inform people what little information we knew. In 1984, I organised a meeting above the Thompson's Arms. A guy from the Terence Higgins Trust came and made the most powerful speech. He said AIDS would change our community forever. He was right. I remember in 1985 we started Manchester AIDS Line. At first the calls were from the worried well, but slowly the virus crept into our conversations and our lives. We were young, full of energy, full of hope. We kept dancing and loving and arguing and lobbying. We kept supporting friends and lovers who were dying of AIDS. But despite it all, we were determined to live. I remember my friend's favourite bar, crowding into its narrow seats every Saturday before going dancing at the Archway. He was forcibly detained at Monster Hospital when he told them he was HIV positive, the only time it happened here. He was scared, confused, shocked. We all were. We picketed the town hall and he was released, but the power to detain us all was clearly there. I remember my best friend Glyn, outrageously camp, covered with diamante. He absolutely adored Manchester Pride. I was with him when he died. His brothers couldn't bear to see him. Brian and I, his closest friends, became his chosen family, as often happened then. He had a white horse-drawn coffin at his funeral and a live string quartet playing Mozart, the height of elegant camp. I did his eulogy. I do a great eulogy, witty, compassionate, moving. I've done too many. I remember the fear, paranoia and panic at the height of the AIDS epidemic. Rumours that gay men would be sent to the Isle of Man, the ultimate punishment. I remember a gay man being thrown out of an ambulance because he had AIDS. I remember the health service quarantining the ambulance afterwards. I remember James Anderton, the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester, taking phone calls from God, telling him to raid our gay bars and saunas. I remember him saying gay men were swirling in a cesspit of our own making. I remember picketing an evangelical rally he was speaking at. We were pelted with Bibles. I remember the anger and the rage. That still drives me today. But most of all, I remember 2009, the year I broke through my own silence, the year I broke through my own secrecy. No longer an angry young activist, but now a counsellor in the city I called home. I remember stepping onto the stage at Manchester Pride. I remember the lump in my throat. I remember the words tumbling out, I am living with HIV. I remember. How could I possibly ever forget?
Just leave one last bit of package.
Yeah, cool. Faffage.
Bit of faffage.
Yeah. Check 1, 2.
Yeah, got sound.
Do you remember Samo and Mandy from Grange Hill? The changing rooms in the school, the lockers, the cocaine falls to the floor. Just say no. I was born in Fleetwood in Lancashire, a town well renowned for fishing and amphetamine. Mum and Dad stayed together. I could never quite understand how someone who were meant to love each other argued so much. I had so much love to give. I remember I was 8 years old. I was down the local fish merchants with my dad. The rum started flowing. I stole a glass of rum. I never knew I could escape the pain and the sadness with alcohol, but I did. I remember being 15 years old. There was an old lady at the end of our street that had a shop. I used to help her put the display out, put things in bags for customers, that sort of stuff. I remember seeing 2 knives, and I thought to myself, why has an old lady in a shop got 2 knives? I stole one. I didn't have any bad intentions around it. Unfortunately, someone died as a result of that. It wasn't my fault, but it haunts me to this day. Navy rum just didn't cut it anymore. My curious fingers found amphetamine. During the week, I'd be burgling people's houses, stealing car stereos, up to all hours of the morning. Then at weekends, I'd be out clubbing, taking ecstasy, dancing till the early hours, with a mad for it crowd. And then, my addiction spiralled deeper, 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 till I become lost. I ran away to Manchester. Fleetwood couldn't hold me anymore. I ended up at a different shop, on Claremont Road. No little old lady this time. The amphetamines in the ecstasy didn't cut the mustard. We begged, we borrowed, we injected. Just say no. I vowed that I never would, and I did. I created this illusion that I was free, but I was a prisoner. There was a warrant for my arrest. I didn't run this time. I pleaded with a police officer to arrest me. I begged the judge to put me in prison. I was sick. I was done. It was over. I was in prison. I got really sick. They rushed me out of the prison on a blue light. I ended up at a hospital, in hospital. I'll never forget it. The nurse came in, she said, there's good news and bad news. The good news is you've not got HIV. The bad news is you've got Hep C. Literature on the bed. She waddled off. A few years later, it caught up with me. HIV positive. It didn't come as an amazing surprise, but it hit me like a truck. People get shocked when I say HIV saved my life. But it did. These days, I still run, but I run towards my feelings and my emotions in the hope that my experience can benefit other people so that they don't have to go down the well that I went down and that they can find it before they get too far. You know, HIV does not define me, but it was the start of the making of me.
You've got Moss Eyed at the time, and then I'll tell you about that headband and me trying to be defiant. You've got to understand that it's who I am is a really, really, really introverted person who works really, really, really hard at putting myself out there. When I was a child, I was taught to be seen and not heard. To be resilient, dignified and determined. I was raised with the belief that good always triumphed and that we would overcome. I remember feeling defiant. I fought back the tears and the taunts in the playground. I fought to speak well and open my mind. I remember feeling determined. The liberation of the 60s and 70s meant that I could walk in spaces that my parents couldn't. I didn't walk though, more tiptoed. I could be seen, but people weren't ready for me to be heard. I remember feeling courageous. So I marched with the feminism of the 60s and danced through the 90s as a new romantic. I skirted the rage of punk rock, never forgetting the soul of Aretha while hitting the high notes with Whitney. The Bodyguard was the soundtrack for my life, and I fantasised about finding my strong he type to my strong she type. Madonna was claiming female sexuality, and Oprah had declared we were every woman, and I was feeling euphoric. But the passage of time reminded me that romance ticked to the biology of a clock that I had no control over. So, the princes and the frogs, they came and they went. I lived and I learned, and I remained hopeful that I would reach that Hollywood finale, and I remained optimistic. But when I tested positive, my biological status wasn't the only thing that changed. I lost my place at society's table. It had always been conditional. I was a bad person. I hadn't learned at school. I hadn't understood the rules. I hadn't got it right. So God was punishing me for leaving the church, and society was punishing me for leaving my perch. I looked to the heavens for answers, but I remember feeling silenced. So by the 1990s, stigma and discrimination loomed large. I didn't know any other illness that could leave you feeling so vulnerable, so afraid, and so isolated. I remember hearing the things they said about people who had AIDS, how they got it, the slurs. I remember the shame. So when my son turned to me in the supermarket car park and asked me, "Mum, have you got HIV?" I understood his question, and I was ready with my answer. "Son, don't worry about me. I'm doing just fine. I'll always be there to look after you." And just like that, something shifted inside of me, something inside so strong, and I felt resilient. HIV has changed, and so have I. My story isn't over, and now I share it with others. I remind them that we are deserving of life and we're deserving of love. We cry, we defy, we love, and we support. We're still in the shadows. We're beginning to be heard, but we're not yet seen. But I'm determined to change that. Together we will overcome. And I'm really hopeful. Thank God for Jesus.